Hi, everyone. I'm Jacob Clemente. I'm a reporter at Charter, and today I'm going to be moderating this panel, The Reskilling Roadmap. Research indicates that there's a significant gap between the training that workers receive and the training that workers think they need to be able to do their jobs well. And that gap could widen over time as new technologies enter the workplace. Today, we're going to be talking about different strategies that companies can adopt to reskill and upskill their workforces to stay ahead. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our two panelists, Brandon Clark and Sarah Tilley. Brandon Clark is the Global Head of Talent Development at Adobe, and Sarah Tilley is the Senior Vice President of Talent Acquisition and Development at ServiceNow. Welcome, Brandon. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thanks, Jacob.
Before we dive in, I'd love for you both to tell us a little bit more about yourselves and your connection to this topic. And we can start with Sarah.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I lead the integrated talent function for ServiceNow. We are an enterprise software company that provides cloud-based intelligent solutions for automating workflows. What that means basically is that any type of digital transformation needed for companies, that's where we come in. So as you can imagine, having contemporary skills for our employees is critically important. And my team is responsible for all of the identification of talent, and then interviewing, hiring, and then once they're employees of ServiceNow, we're responsible for all of the talent development, learning development, succession planning, talent management for the entire employee population globally.
And Brandon?
Thank you for having me. So I'm Brandon Clark. I'm based in the California Bay Area, and I lead talent development for Adobe, and that means simply that I get to wake up every day thinking about how to help our almost 30,000 super creative, intelligent employees do their best work. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you both. As you guys are both aware, we find ourselves in a time where jobs are evolving rapidly. According to data from LinkedIn, the skill set required to do your average job changed 25% since 2015. And to 2030, that could increase to 65%. When you ask researchers and business leaders what companies should do to stay ahead and prepare their workforces for these changes, you often hear a similar answer, which is continuous learning. So that's where I'd like to start today. What does it mean to build a culture of continuous learning, and what does that look like in practice? We can start with Brandon.
Yeah, thanks for this question. It's an important one. And I think many companies, ours included, are recognizing this right now. If you think about it, most companies have the capital to buy whatever technology they need to optimize their business. And what they can't buy, though, is the skills, imaginations, mindsets of their workforces. And, what I think that many CEOs have realized is that great people, smart people, really can make the difference in their company. And so it's become true that learning professionals like Sarah and I are more and more being asked to interact with the C-suite to make sure that our people strategy can support the business strategy. And those two are connected at the hip. And what's also become clear, and that you mentioned in the beginning, is that as technology moves faster and faster, the problems that we're solving become more and more complex. Mm-hmm. And more of our workforce, they're facing problems that haven't been solved before. And there's no handbook or learning course on how to solve it. So, in my view, the future of work is a lot less about what you know today and a lot more about something that I'll call learnability or learning agility. And it's the ability to quickly adapt your skills to a new environment. And I think it was Josh Bersin that did a study in 2008 of over 40,000 companies. It was a longitudinal study. And he found that the number one predictor of business impact was the strength of an organization's learning culture. And I think that's only going to become more and more true as time goes on. So it's important for professionals, learning professionals, HR professionals, to really take this idea of a learning culture seriously.
Sarah?
I love that quote, Brandon, by the way. Or that stat, I should say, from Josh Bersin. I hadn't heard that, but that's really powerful. And I agree with what you said too, in terms of organizations are waking up to the talent strategy is the business strategy. The business strategy is the talent strategy. I think for as long as I can recall, it's been viewed as separately. But to your question, Jacob, on continuous learning, I think first of all, we've got to be a lot more proactive in predicting the skills that are needed, so we aren't in this constant scramble. And I know we're going to get into skills intelligence, which I think is pretty important to that. But on the topic of continuous learning, I think people behave in the way that they're rewarded. So by setting up our HR tech and our processes and our standards to focus on how we want people to learn, how we want people to grow, what behavior we want to see, then we're both setting the standard, and then we're rewarding the best behaviors. And then brains are tuned on and people seek out those growth opportunities. And then we do it in the flow of work. So training on what behavior, for example, we want managers to demonstrate when having quarterly growth conversations with their employees. That's served up when they're accessing the tool. Inclusive hiring practices, that's served up when a manager wants to open a requisition. So I think, again, finding ways to have it be in the flow of work, that's what comes to mind when I think about continuous learning. And then I think, of course, making it as personalized as possible, making it easily accessible as well.
Definitely. A survey from earlier this year by Cypher Learning, an online learning platform, found that a significant share of employees view the workplace training that they receive as either bland or forgettable. And over half of the survey respondents said that they see workplace training as a box ticking exercise for their companies. Sarah, I'd love to hear what tools you think companies have at their disposal to make sure that the workforce training programs they offer are more engaging and memorable.
Yeah, I think, there are a lot of qualitative and quantitative measures on the things I think you want to make progress on for both employees and for the company. I really think the key is all about relevancy. Like where do the things that employees want overlap with what the company needs? So, I may want to learn how to surf, but if I'm working for a company that makes surfboards, it's not really that relevant. However, if I want to learn how to better present to senior executives and we sell a product to senior executives, that's valuable all around. And so I think it's that relevancy is really important. And then I think, there's a number of ways. Then it's sort of taking that growth product mindset. You put it out, you test it, you iterate, you listen, you see what is actually moving the needle on the things that you want to move the needle on. Employee sentiment. Are people actually getting promoted? Are they moving? Are they staying? The ones you want to stay? Are they adopting the what you're putting out there? I think are important points.
Brandon?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Sarah. Like the interesting thing now is that we all have smartphones in our pockets, and we're all surrounded by beautiful experiences all the time and content that really makes you feel something. It makes you laugh. It makes you cry. It's memorable. And so when you come to work and the content that you come in contact with doesn't make you feel anything, to your point, Sarah, is not relevant, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So I agree with this sentiment. And so, I believe that the modern learning professional has to be thoughtful about creating experiences that are, in fact, experiences and not just training.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be experts at, I'm going to throw a $10 word like andragogy, which is just adult learning, and that's why, I can give an example at Adobe. We've really rethought our whole approach to leadership development. Many companies, they'll hire you, pull you into a 2 or 3 day training, and then just pray that you remember and use some of these skills when the situations arise. And, what we've done is to try to create an experience that, as Sarah mentioned before, is just in time. And so we've got 4 moments that matter for managers and employees throughout the year. And we use those times to really train our managers on how to make the most of that time. We also use our leaders as storytellers. To my point earlier about people needing to feel something, it's a whole different scenario. People respond to story. And when you have a leader that is telling you at a very senior level how they've completely made a terrible decision and what happened, or how they were supposed to be giving someone feedback and they chickened out of it, and then that problem only festered. It really helps you remember. We had a leader one time that told us the most valuable piece of feedback someone gave them was that his cologne was too pungent. And he had been,
That's important feedback.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? He had been tranching around the office, and like no one had the courage to tell him that. And he said, I was so thankful that someone told me. It stung at first, but I was so thankful because who knows how many people thought that and didn't have the courage to say.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's memorable stories like that that make you go, okay, yeah, there's a cost to, taking the easy way out.
Right.
And then the last thing I'll say is we try to create an experience that is centered back to this idea of real talk. I talked about this this idea of giving feedback. We ask managers, what gets in the way of giving feedback? Let's not just give some corporate speak about the importance of feedback. And they said sometimes they just don't make the time for it. They don't have the words to say, and then they're afraid of damaging the relationships. We structured our whole learning experience around solving those three problems for managers. Like, how do you make the time? How do we give them words that they can use and structure the feedback so it makes sense? And then what are strategies so that you don't damage the relationship? Because at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we need to be able to be respected when we get feedback that might be critical.
Mhm.
And Brandon, when you launch a program like this for upskilling your managers, how are you measuring impact of those training programs?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So, for the Adobe Leader Experience, we've been focused on not just measuring whether people like the training or not, because it really doesn't matter if they liked it. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. What really matters is if it actually moves a needle on a behavior change, right? And so we're really intentional at Adobe about starting with real problems that we want to solve and being specific about the problems that we want to solve. It's not enough to say we want to make our leaders better. We say, well, what about leadership do we want to make them better at? And so my team knows that every learning engagement has to start with a problem statement. And so for the Adobe Leader Experience, I'll just give an example that I was alluding to before. We're a really nice culture at Adobe. And so sometimes our managers struggle to give actionable feedback. And so we looked at our check-in data, and we compared managers that had low performers with managers that had high performers. And the interesting part is that our managers were essentially saying the same thing. They were saying, high performer, keep up the great work, and low performer, keep up the great work. And so we said the specific problem to solve here is we want to improve the feedback quality, especially for our low performance. And so we said, let's take a representative sample of our manager's feedback and track it over several quarters and rank it on a 3-tier scale of low quality, medium quality, and high quality. And the good news is, as a result of our focus, we've increased our manager's feedback quality by more than 3 times over the last 3 quarters. And it's because we started with a clear problem statement. We had a way to know if we were making progress on that problem statement. And we closed the knowing-doing gap by bringing the experience to the time our managers needed help actually giving the feedback. And so I'm proud of that. Hats off to my team, because we've been really intentional this year about being problem solvers first and learning professionals second.
That's a really great example. Sarah, something that we've been hearing a lot about in our reporting is this move towards skills-based organizations that a lot of companies are transitioning themselves into. And that's partly in response to this rapid development or rapid evolution of jobs that we've been talking about. At a high level, this involves making talent decisions based on skills rather than job titles or degrees. And I know this is something that you thought a lot about. Can you tell me a little bit how you're tackling this problem at ServiceNow?
Yeah, sure. I think you're right. This is all I'm hearing about. I'm sure many of us are hearing about. And I think we've been talking about it for years in HR about how do you assess someone beyond their specific experience. But I think we just default back to the traditional methods. And I am now convinced in a way that I wasn't maybe even a year and a half ago that you cannot do this without an HR AI powered skills intelligence system. I think that otherwise it's just going to continue to be out of reach. It's going to be manual. So, we're very fortunate we this is what we do. So we actually built our own, and we've been on that journey to implement it. So we're out there in the world, obviously helping our customers with it, but then we're implementing it internally. So I have learned so much. I think, for me, even this idea of a skills strategy and leveraging, AI and intelligence for it, it was a very abstract idea, but now I understand it's all about really breaking everything down into a set of skills, and then you use AI and Gen AI really to match skills to roles, to trainings, to opportunities, and then you can more effectively and intentionally develop talent for today and then for the future. And, I think there's a clear benefit to the employee, but we also look at it in terms of the benefit to the manager and to the company, and how do we capitalize on all of those benefits. So if you move to a skill based strategy, again, using in technology, I think employees, the benefit, they're empowered to really navigate and build their own career. They're much clearer on what are the skills that are needed to get to where they want to go, and then they can track their skills and their goals and build personalized learning plans to reach those goals. And then everyone's on the same path, so they're getting support to do that from their leaders, and up to the most senior level, there's recognition of the benefits. So you can use AI to recommend relevant training, mentors, mobility opportunities based on the skills that an individual employee has and then what they need. And then managers, it's a much better way to optimize team performance and engagement and output, and even hiring for the relevant skills that you need, and figuring out what is the training that what are the levers that we can pull from a training and development perspective that support the development of my team or my team members to align to the highest needs. And then at the company-wide level, organizations are finally going to be able to build a data-driven talent management strategy, like how we manage all of the talent that ensures that HR investments are really maximized, because obviously most companies, that's the bulk of the investment for almost any organization, 50 to 70% of the total cost for most organizations.
Right.
So it's really ensuring that you've got the ability to quantify all of that and close the gaps. So yeah, we've been on this journey. We've got about 13,000 skills that we've identified across 175 job families, and about 1,200 skills right now. We're mapping them to technical categories, behavioral, a number of different, big buckets: experience, language, you name it, critical thinking, et cetera. So we've been piloting with a few selected groups, and we're using the data we have, because every company has a tremendous amount of data, and employees have a tremendous amount of data on their skills. So how do we make it easy for them to access that? So that's really then serving it up, having individual employees and leaders validate, add beyond that, and then ultimately feed it into the apps that we want to use to support this, goals, growth plans to be worked with the managers, aspirations, the career hub, et cetera. So we are well on that journey. I think, one of the things we've definitely learned too is that we have to have, dynamic from the jump, as employees are joining the organization, moving forward, indoctrinating employees early on the value of this. And then there's a whole change management approach. Again, build, test, learn, iterate, make it the best tech experience you can, ground people in the business case, market the heck out of it. So we are deep in that work right now.
Yeah, and we have time for one more question. on this topic of skills, and you mentioned that your skills taxonomy has 13,000 different skills within your organization. AI is obviously going to change a lot of our jobs, and with it, the skills that companies hire for. I'd love for you both briefly to talk a little bit about what skills you think are going to matter 5 to 10 years from now. We can start with Brandon.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think that there are skills that inherently make us human and relate well to other humans. And I think those will always be important. So building relationships, influencing, having empathy, being transparent, communicating well. All those sort of human skills are going to be even more important in my view. But I'll also sort of end where I began. I do think learning agility, this idea of being able to quickly adapt your skill set, is an important piece that's going to be more and more important as technology moves faster and faster.
Sarah?
Yeah, I like that, Brandon, a lot too. I think that we're always going to need smart people to ensure we can leverage the tech to run some of the things that humans are doing today. So as you were talking, I thought, would it be cheating to say HR is the role? Those are roles that'll never go away. Those are always going to be the most critical, right? But I think ultimately, companies are more and more going to be valued on their intelligence and how much data they have and how much intelligence they can and insights they can pull from that. So I do think, all of the roles that deal with data, AI specialist, data scientist, and then some of the tech capabilities, cybersecurity is going to be a big one, I think, for a long time. The way in which people interact with technology, so UX, UI, and then in addition to HR, I also think people with financial expertise are going to continue to be in high demand.
That's really great. So that's it for our panel on the reskilling roadmap. Thank you both for your great answers. Brandon Clark is the Global Head of Talent Development at Adobe, and Sarah Tilley is the Senior Vice President of Talent Acquisition and Development at ServiceNow. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.